Judy Tsuei is the founder of Wild Hearted Words, a woman of color strategic branding and content marketing agency specializing in health, wellness, and innovative tech brands. She has been featured in Fast Company, BBC Travel, and Mind Body Green. She's the author of The Little Book of Tibetan Rituals. She's currently working on How to Disappoint Your Parents in 10 Shameless Steps, a modern Asian American guide. She's also the host of the Fuck Saving Face podcast. Welcome to Notes from a Ghost, a podcast about stories and the people who tell them. My name is Charlie, and I'm a ghostwriter. I love a good story. I hope you enjoy this one. Judy, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited. And I'm glad to know that you can curse on your podcast.
Yeah, oh yeah, explicit warning. You've been warned. Um, let's start with rejection. I actually discovered you on LinkedIn, and you had a post where you were, I guess you could say, like dancing off a recent rejection from a publisher. And that seems like a pretty good attitude. What would be your advice to writers and storytellers for not only dealing with rejection but bouncing back from it?
Well, that's funny because it's the only time I've ever filmed a video of me dancing and like sharing it online. So I'm not part of any of those viral trends. But I'm part of the Tory Burch Foundation Fellowship, and they appointed a new president for the Tory Burch company, the Tory Burch Foundation. And she was remarkable, this woman named Tiffany Dufu. And so we were asking her when she was speaking with all of us, kind of gleaning her experience, because she's also been a published writer and whatnot. Like, what do you do when you have those hard moments, when you're dealing with all of these stressors, things aren't going the way that you thought? And she was saying, like, she'll go into her room, she'll put on her Beats by Dre, she'll just put on music, and she'll just dance it out until someone sometimes has to knock on the door and be like, are you going to join us for dinner? Um, and the other part that I thought was so interesting is she had to renegotiate her marriage too, where she was saying, like, okay, we're in a different, like, who we were before is different than who we are now. And so because of that, we need to reconfigure the way that this relationship works. And so I think in answer to your question, I don't think we give ourselves a lot of space and grace to understand that we're growing, and we're always at our growing edge if we allow for it. And that growing edge is not very comfortable. A lot of the times we don't see that internal growth or even the external growth because we're in it, we're in the middle of it. And so we don't really know that this discomfort is different than the discomfort that we felt like 5 years ago when we were, more novice or embarking on something different. So I think my former neighbor used to always say to me, space and grace, space and grace. And so when I feel very stressed or when I feel like disappointed, I have to remind myself, like, space and grace, space and grace. And it's also because, I wasn't raised with gentle parents. I was raised with tiger parents. And so the internal voice that I have is one that's very harsh and very critical. And so I have to catch myself a lot of times to be like, that's not the actual truth. The actual truth is that I've tried. And, even trying is like a bold move, going out there, going after your dreams. And I will also say, like, while you were talking, you reminded me that, I've been a writer since I was in fourth grade, and I realized, like, this was something that I could do. And then professionally, internships, all that stuff since my early 20s. And so now I'm in my mid 40s. So I've been doing this for a minute, and I always joke around, like, anything that's ever had words, I've touched somewhere along the way. Product descriptions, direct mail pieces, websites, emails, whatever it is that has words, I've written it. But I was asked to ghostwrite for this book for a very well-known founder, for a very, how can I say, controversial brand, I guess you could say. And so he actually didn't like the person who had written the original draft, and he sent it to me to take a look at it. So I read through and I gave him feedback. He's like, yeah, that's exactly what I thought. So then he asked me to help him. And so in the course of our working together, we shifted the narrative and we brought in a lot of different elements to it. And then he sent it back to the original person. And this original person has ghostwritten for other very notable figures as well. And the letter that came back was the most scathing piece of feedback that I have ever gotten. Like, there was not one redeeming thing, and it was a 2-page letter. And
Whoa.
so I forwarded it to one of my closest friends, and I was like, oh my God, look at this. And she's like, Every single person that I sent it to, and because I just needed to like bounce it off to be a reality check, they were like, okay, obviously that person has their own issues because I've never provided feedback like that to anyone, even when I thought it was like not great. There's just no way that I would write something like that to someone. And so after I got that piece of feedback, I really had to take a step back and be like, am I any good at what I do? But so I think that if you are in that space, having people that you can trust, who know you, who know all of you, who know your professional talents, your personal attributes and whatnot, and your lived experience, having them as a reality check is a very helpful thing to have someone else like, and not just people who are going to be like, you're great, I love you, don't worry about it, but like, no, like, let's take a realistic look at this. And how do you feel about it? Are there areas that you could have improved, etc.? So my goal is always to just try to take like one piece of wisdom away, even if, so now I have that letter, by the way. So I'm waiting for that, New York Times bestseller or whatever it is. And then I can be like, look at that, buddy.
That sounds nightmarish, but
Oh yeah. Yeah.
not uncommon.
Yeah. Mhm.
My instinctive question would be, was your status in that project protected from with some kind of a contract or something?
Like, well, the we had a contract, me and my client, but then I didn't know he was going to send it back to the original person who he didn't like, like their original draft. And so when I went, just even thinking rationally, logistically, you're like, of course, if you found out that a project that you did went to somebody else and then it came back to you, like, how would you feel about it? And so, yeah, and I think I don't know if what contract they had originally. I think they had something left over as well, which is probably why he sent it. But it's interesting, like it's hard not if you're a writer, most likely you're a sensitive person. And I'm a highly sensitive person, so that was like tough. But I think also the more that you do this work, the more that you have to learn how to navigate like the tough parts and the disappointments and the failures and the expectations. And I used to be a yoga teacher and a Reiki practitioner. So I had to learn, and I still am learning to not take things personally, that so much of life is a projection. And whatever you're experiencing as your reality is truly a story in your head. Because someone else experiencing the exact same moment is going to have a very different narrative in their minds. So, how can you make sure that you're taking care of your mental and emotional wellness throughout all of this?
Hmm. And I mean, speaking of tough stuff,
Mhm.
one thing that really jumps out in your work is you write about divorce and you
Mhm.
write about it, I think, in a very fearless way. And that's a topic that a lot of people, even if they
Mhm.
write about controversial things, they treat that as totally something to keep to themselves or even a taboo for anyone to write about.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, what's it like writing about divorce, I guess?
What's interesting is there's so much more that I want to say. And I I had talked to an attorney actually because I'm in the midst of working on the memoir that you mentioned in the bio. And I'd asked her, from a legal ramification standpoint, knowing the personality that I've had to deal with, what are some things that I should know. And she had said to me, if you would not present it in a court of law, then I would highly recommend that you consider that like as you're writing. So if it wouldn't be something that you would present to a judge and say, like, this is what I experienced, this is the person who I was dealing with, et cetera, then like maybe not. And, I think it's tough, especially if you have children, because I'm keenly aware that, my daughter one day will have access to these materials. And so, what is it that I want her to walk away with? Because when I was in the beginning stages of getting divorced, I had a friend tell me, just remember that your daughter knows that she's made half of her dad and half of you. So, whatever you say or think about him, she's going to internalize as what you think about her. And that has helped me really navigate very difficult situations with a lot of grace and a lot of respect and tact because I want to make sure that she understands that she is unconditionally loved and her relationship with her father is different from the relationship that I had with him. And so they will have their journey and I've had my journey. And I think that the other part that was really interesting to me is when I open up about divorce to all these remarkable women, like very accomplished, driven, the amount of stories that they shared with me in confidence, I was so shocked. Like, how could there be so much suffering and so much shame and stigma that you're just keeping to yourself and trying to make it look like on the outside everything's okay? And what pain you must have gone through, how isolated you must have felt, and just how much that exacerbated everything. And if I do have, like one of my superpowers has always been that I'm okay talking about these things. I don't think everybody is, and that's fine, but I'm okay talking about it because I know what it feels like to suffer mentally and emotionally and to go through anxiety and depression and all of those kinds of things. And I don't want anybody else to suffer alone. And I think the other part is like, I had severe postpartum depression. And so when you get to a point where if you're having suicidal ideation or anything like that, and then also we were mentioning before we hopped onto this podcast, my partner is a school administrator. And so he shared with me a lot of since COVID, the students who have committed suicide or, other things like that. And they're so young. I mean, this is like high school and junior high. And I just remember thinking about that and hearing that and thinking about myself at that age or any of those stages and how for someone who's young, they haven't gone enough times around the sun to know that it'll get better or that they can navigate it or that there's so much richness in life to come that can be a contrast to what they experienced. And so that to me is so heartbreaking to think that, you could give it all up and miss out on so much and the world needs you. And so I think that's one of the reasons that I feel very okay talking about these harder things because I don't want people to feel like they're all alone. And, I'm like, if you are a smart, even whatever, life is hard. There's so many attributes to it. And like to add shame on top of it is unnecessary, I think. And it just contributes to more suffering. So let's not.
Mm. And what would you say to somebody who like wants to go there and they're carrying
Hmm.
around some difficult
Hmm.
stuff and they want to write about it? I mean, how do you
Yeah.
start?
I mean, one of the things that I would caution too is now in the digital world, once you write something, it's going to be out there. If someone shares it and like whatnot, and you're going to be a different person like a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So obviously, you can't predict the future, but just to really be clear and aligned with yourself every time you write and publish something to know that this is going to be out there and like, is it my truth right now? Um, is it my truth like without trying to throw someone else under the bus. I guess like not making your challenges and your problems someone else's problems. So right now I'm learning a lot about trauma-informed care. And you're in Ireland, and I've been told that in Ireland, like they're leading the way in creating a trauma-informed country. And so understanding that and understanding how you could be re-traumatized or like go through so much pain from reading someone else's story. I'm very cognizant about that. And I want to make sure that like people have the resources that they need to get the support that they need. And that writing is such a cathartic experience. And sometimes maybe that writing is just for you. And sometimes maybe that writing will have a message that someone else needs to see. So, one of the exercises that I think has been so powerful in my own journey to heal and to know what I should write and what I should share is a grief journaling. So, I think we're not taught as a culture or a people how to manage grief and how to handle it because grief is not linear, just like feelings are not linear. So they can pop up at any time. And so one of the things that my therapist encouraged me to do is get a journal that looks like whoever the person is that you're dealing with or whatever the circumstance, anything that like has that feeling to it. And then set a timer for 10 to 15 minutes and then just stream of consciousness, just like journal it all out. And it could just be, I don't know what I'm writing, I don't know what I'm writing, or dot, 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 or like, fuck, 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 fuck. And so like the whole thing. Then after the timer goes off, you just stop, you get up, you move around. So like kind of like that dance video, you like shake it off. And then you like continue to go. And being able to do that while it sounds so simple has been extremely transformative in helping me to access feelings or parts of myself that I just didn't even want to like acknowledge or just seemed like it was too difficult or painful. And the thing is that unless you deal with that grief, which becomes a barrier in your life, then you can't let in all of the other good stuff. Even when your intellectual mind understands it is right here. I have someone who loves me so much right here. Great, your intellectual mind understands that, but your emotional mind and your emotional body don't fully get it. And so until you do the grief work, you won't believe that you're worthy or that that is for you, that that can be for you. So I would say, like, doing that internal work is so important in addition to managing, like, whatever you want to write and share out into the world. Also, because now that when we share out into the world, everybody's heard about trolls and like lurkers and the whole thing. And you never know, like, if you're not doing the inner work to be able to handle the feedback that you get, it can be really, really challenging and difficult. And it's still weird for me. Like I go out and about and people are like, "Oh, I saw that you wrote this on Instagram or whatever." I was like, "I write." Like, what do you know about me now?
Oh, yeah, no, it's um that's interesting about Ireland. I need to look that up. It's definitely
Hmm.
a traumatic history, to say the
Hmm.
least.
Hmm.
Up until very recently.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
the one thing when I work with ghostwriting clients, I always, if it's going to be a tough subject, I always try to get a sense of like, have they done some version of work on their own? Doesn't have to look like, it doesn't have to be therapy. It doesn't have to be like inventory, but
Yeah.
like something. Because in
Hmm.
my experience, I can work with someone for whom the interviews are hard.
Hmm.
They should be hard. Like I
Hmm.
working with someone now where we both cry on these calls.
Hmm.
I It's very challenging to work with someone for whom it's so raw that they're not going to be able to edit. Because by the time we get to a draft, it's you need to at least be able to like read it without breaking down. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that tends to be where I draw the line. I don't know if that's the
Hmm.
trauma informed way to do it, but that's usually
Yeah.
how I think about it.
Yeah, and I think that that's so respectful for you to do for your clients because I feel like there's in the world that we live in, it can be opportunistic, especially when you're building your business and like, you want to leverage like this, that, or the other thing. And so being able to have that alignment with your core values and being able to really be conscientious about the person that you're working with is so important. And for anybody building a business, that's going to go a really long way if you care about your clients and you genuinely care. It's one of the things that we do really well in my company as an agency is we are very invested in the people that we work with, obviously with healthy boundaries, but we really care. And so people can feel that. And there's this website called WGSN. It's trend forecasting. And so they do this thing where they will forecast the different archetypes or the different emotional, like levels that the world will have in the next year. They've done one for you know, already for 2025. And if you read through that, it makes a lot of sense. It will basically tell you, like, this is the way that the world is feeling, and here's how it's going to express itself in these main dominant personalities. And so when you think about that, one of the things that's coming up in 2024 and 2025 is that we are so overwhelmed. The technology is advancing so quickly, and we don't have the capacity to keep up at the pace that everything is going as human beings. Like it's just, yeah, our brains can understand it, but like all of us, it's having a very detrimental effect. So because of that, in the upcoming years, people are really seeking that human touch. They're really seeking that authenticity and that genuine connection and opting out of things that don't feel like, just saying like, I don't need bigger and better. Like that's not the way that actually makes me feel good. So I think that knowing that and knowing that that's, what we all crave as people, if you're building a business, that's very important just to like really keenly be focused on.
And yeah, I was just about to kind of switch gears and talk a little bit about the business side. You've had like major success, would be putting it mildly, as an entrepreneur, but also as a mentor for up and coming entrepreneurs. Um, Everybody talks about telling stories. That's like this
Mhm.
buzzword in business. People want to tell their
Mhm.
brand story. As an actual like storyteller, what's your advice? Like, how do brands tell better stories?
I always remember the simple adage, which is emotions sell, facts tell. And so, if you can figure out the emotional connection to the person that you're writing to, that will always be the thing that keeps them coming back for more because we are seeking that emotional connection. And so, any brand that can do that well and truly understand consumer psychology, like I am still fascinated by psychology and why we do the things we do and how we work as people. And if you understand that for the person that you want to work with, it goes a long way. I just had a call with a client, and she was asking, like, I just feel like my sales, like, people are booking calls, but they're not closing. And so, like, something is off and something's missing. And so I asked her, are you listening to the person who you're talking to? Are you addressing the need that they have and the want that they have, but then also demonstrating that you will get them from where they are to where they truly want to be? And I think that that's like, as a writer, being able to interview and listen and hear them, but to hear them on a deeper level and from that emotional level, if you can speak to that, that genuine desire, it goes such a long way. And I think sales has like a very dirty connotation. It's had it for like a long time. And I always was like, I'm not a good salesperson. Like, whatever, like, I don't do sales. I do sales all the time. Like, that is what I do. And it's because all I'm doing is having a genuine conversation with someone. So by the time, anytime I've ever been out and about, I always say, the success of my business has been built upon the connections and the relationships that I've made. The word of mouth referrals, that's predominantly how I get business. And it's just from me being out and about in life, sharing about what I do, hearing what someone else is doing, and then saying, like, oh, you have a need. I can help you to fulfill that need, but then also get you to what you really want. And so that conversation doesn't ever feel salesy. It feels very genuine. It feels like two people connecting. And then by the time that we actually work together, there is no friction. There is no like, well, I don't know. I got to think about it. They're like, how do I sign up? How do I sign up? I had a client recently ask me repeatedly in emails, I am ready. You tell me what I need to do. Like, I just want to sign up. And it was like one of the largest accounts that I've ever signed on to and they were the ones actively pursuing me. So I think just remembering to be genuine is going to go a long way. And to, all those techniques are great. That's good to have in the back of your head, but like connect with someone.
I recently had probably the opposite of like a nasty rejection letter where I got a text message that was just, it was like one line. So you want to write my book? Like it was
Oh,
after it had this call that, with someone who had been approached by much more established ghostwriters than myself. And he liked me and we got along. And like you said, nobody was selling anything. And
wow.
yeah, it's
Wonderful. And it feels so much better. It
so much better.
feels for everyone so much better.
So much better. Because yeah, like same. I think selling grosses me out, but I do it all the time, but it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be salesy.
I think the other word that we can use is also enrolling people in ideas or enrolling people like, in whatever the program is, whatever the service is. I had a friend who he was on Shark Tank and well, I have a friend, he's still my friend, but he was on Shark Tank and all those kinds of things. And he, is a very, very astute, intelligent person who's been in remarkable business realms. And when we were working together and just becoming friends, he was like, you are so good at enrolling people in ideas. Like you get people so excited about whatever it is that you're talking about. And that's a huge skill to have. So be passionate about what you do too.
Um, Speaking of passion and love, you're also a mother.
Mhm.
What has motherhood brought to your writing practice? And then what has writing taught you about being a mom?
Well, my daughter's name is Wilder Love. And I always say that she teaches me how to love more wildly. I did not know if I wanted to be a mom because I helped raise my three younger siblings from a very early age. I'm 9 years older than my packing the lunches, doing the bath times, all the things. So despite the fact that other people thought I was very maternal and nurturing, I was like, I don't know who you're talking about. That's not me. But we were living on Kauai. I was living on Kauai, met my eventual husband, who I'm now divorced from. But we had this whirlwind situation where within 2 weeks of knowing each other, we consciously chose to conceive because we palpably could feel a presence wanting to come into being. And I know that that sounds wild, but even after we had the conversation, I was swimming in Kalihiwai Bay, which is where these spinner dolphins will come every year. And you can be in the water with them. They will swim all around you. It's so remarkable. And so I was there. And after we had the conversation, but before we like, tried, I felt flooded with full knowing I'm gonna have a girl. And so I went home and I told him, and he was like, oh, I know. He'd already started dreaming about her at different phases of her life. So she is a very I'm so glad that that choice was made very clear and apparent for me. And it was not easy after that. Like I was super sick while I was pregnant. I couldn't function in my profession. Um, then I had her. My postpartum depression didn't ramp up until, 2 years, and I was in a very unhealthy marriage. And so all of those things made it very difficult. And so the writing component of it, I tried to get back into it after I had her. And I remember I reached out to this one woman who I admired, who also became a mother and then shared openly about mental health struggles and like things like that. And she said to me on a live call, she was like, "Look, I just want to tell you, your career will always be there. This time with your daughter will not always be like this. It will not always be, you won't always, like, she won't always be this age. And so you want to be there to enjoy this. This is everything. And I can tell you now, if you don't enjoy this now, and just allow your career to be what it is for now, you're going to regret it if you were to focus on your career now." And so that gave me a lot of like space to just be with the journey of becoming a mother. Um, and, as someone described it to me one time as when you become a parent, you discover a room in your house that you never knew existed. So it's not completely foreign, but it's also, where did this come from? And so that description to me, I felt like was such a wonderful way to describe what I felt like parenthood or motherhood was like. And since that time, it's forced me to really get clear on my core values and what is it that drives me as a person. Kind of going back to the divorce thing, when I first realized that we needed to get divorced, I reached out to a friend and she said, "I think this is the best thing that could happen for you. I think you are built like this dynamic will be the best way that will serve you best." And I knew it when she said it. I knew it. I even knew it before she said it, but I wasn't ready to hear it because of all the cultural like influences and the familial influences and societal like influences. And being a divorced mom has been the best thing for me individually. It has allowed me to have the time that I need because I'm an introvert and I'm super driven in my career. And it gives me the time when she's with her dad to be able to focus on those things that I need to do to make sure I'm taking care of myself, healing, trauma, intergenerational things. Because as she grows, each age she is, and there's like, child parenting books that will tell you this. When your kid gets to an age where you experience some trauma in your life, it's going to come up again. And so as I watch her grow, it brings up things for me that I continually have to work through to make sure that I'm not taking whatever I went through and then putting it on her. It's an imperfect process, but it's definitely like I need the time and the bandwidth to be able to do that, to show up as the mom that I want to be and to have the career that I want to be. And so her spring break is next week. I'm taking her to Utah, and having this business allows me to take that time to be with her and focus on her. And so, and then, when she's with her dad, then I can focus on me and what I need. And so I want to encourage like anybody who is a parent and trying to figure it all out, um, to really come back to your core values and what's important, and understanding that what you think are your core values may not actually be. So I became a neurolinguistic programming like master practitioner. And so I use that in my coaching. And what we realized is that when you do a values exercise, you like dump out all of the values that you have, and then you arrange them by order of priority. And if you arrange them, you will see that anything beyond the top five is you're not actually going to act on them. Like it's not a propelling enough force. So a lot of people will say, "I want to be wealthy. I want to make this much money." But then when you go through the values exercise, money is like down here at like number 10. Then you do like breakthrough sessions and you do clearing exercises and things like that, and then you re-elicit your values and you will see that your values have completely shifted. And so just knowing that whatever your top 5 values are, that's what you're going to act upon. So making sure that you are as clear as you possibly can be to know what those are, and that's what are going to be the guideposts to your life.
That sounds a lot like the process of, I always start any project asking kind of why do you want to write a book? And
Mhm.
um, the bottom line is your book can't be about 5 things.
Yeah.
You're lucky if you get to kind of do one thing
Yeah.
really thoroughly. And I think sometimes that's a rude awakening for people because they think they need to cover like a lot of ground when really they'd be better off kind of going deep on
Mhm.
one thing.
Yeah.
Um, it sounds like the ocean is a major source for you. Tell me about that.
I've always lived near a body of water. I grew up in LA. We didn't really go to I'm Asian, so, my family was like, nobody wants to get tan, and I'm naturally tan. So, um, but every single time I would see the ocean, even from a young age, it would just always take my breath away. And when I was in my healing journey, like I had an eating disorder from the age of 17 for like the next like 15 plus years that I was dealing with, all this like family of origin stuff. My parents were immigrants, like they were tiger parents, all of this stuff. And so I started discovering spirituality in my and when I did, I just remember that nature felt like the most spiritual, divine place that I could, and it made all my problems. It felt like everything just kind of like went away, and you just knew what the core kind of purpose or meaning of life would be. And thankfully, in my 20s, I learned how to surf. And since then, have yes, I've lived in all of these places and gone on all these trips. And one of my closest friends owns like a global surf brand, and so we're actually taking the kids to Saladita in Mexico in June, which is like the second year that we'll be doing it. And so being able to see like well, first, when you're surfing, it feels like you catch that wave and you feel like you're flying. And you get to be around dolphins here in San Diego. You get to just kind of really remember, like, again, what you're there. People have done studies, I think, that like if you live near the ocean, you're generally calmer, like the ions in the air and whatnot. But I think we all need that reminder because it's so easy to get into the granular things and to get lost in that stress of like day to day, like life and obligations and accomplishments and all that kind of stuff. But when you see something so expansive as the ocean and the fact that like we don't know what's in it all, like that's remarkable to me. I think that's a good reminder to like be humble and to just like, again, give yourself space.
Something to Google when we sign off there. I think it was like earlier this week, they discovered like, I think something like 100 new species living on an undersea mountain off of Chile.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah, like
that's amazing.
types of crabs and squid that were unknown to science last week.
See, fascinating. I love it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Sometimes I think the writing came along because actually, like being Jacques Cousteau isn't like a viable
Mm.
career path.
Well, and I will also say, if you don't live near a body of water, if you don't live near the ocean, if the ocean's not your thing, totally okay. One of the things that my therapist says that is really beneficial for stress and for just remembering what's important, stand outside, feel the sun on your skin. Do nothing. Do not be listening to a podcast. Don't be like trying to like, nothing. You're just standing there and all you're doing is being present and savoring the moment. And the more that you can input those like savoring moments in your day, the more that you remind yourself, I've got this. This is why I'm on this moment to feel the sun. And
Where can listeners find you, and what do you have coming up that you're excited about?
thank you for asking. You can go to wildheartedwords.com and you'll see stuff about our agency. You'll see the podcast links. You'll see blog posts, like all of that kind of good stuff. I'm very active on LinkedIn, which is where you found me. And it's my name, Judy, Tsuei. It's a lot of vowels in a row. And then I'm working on my book. I'm actually talking to a publicist about, the book, the potential. And the podcast and just I'm very much a sharer online. Not too much, not an oversharer, but a good sharer. So you can find me on Instagram and all of those places too.
Great. Well, Judy, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
If you have an epic story, I'd love to hear it. You can find me at dailyprose.com or on LinkedIn. My links and Judy's are in the show notes. Thanks for listening.